Welcome to the Eric Metaxas Show. Our humble objective, to change the world. We aim to do it one person at a time, but we're happy to break that rule if you have friends. Broadcasting live from the Empire State Building in the heart of New York City, if New York City has a heart, but it does. And they're broadcasting from it right now. The Eric Metaxas Show with your permanent guest host, Eric Metaxas.
That's my cue. That's my cue. This is Eric Metaxas. Hey, how are you out there listening in Radio Land? I've got something very exciting in our first segment here, so I don't want to waste any more time than I've already wasted. Ted Cruz is my guest. Ted Cruz is on the line. Ted, are you there?
Eric, I am, and I'll tell you, I'm thrilled to be with you.
You're not just doing an impression of Ted Cruz. This is actually the Senator Ted Cruz.
It is indeed. I hope this is actually Eric Metaxas, because I have to tell you, Bonhoeffer is one of the most incredible books I've ever read in my life. And Amazing Grace is powerful and moving and remains one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. So you do an extraordinary job bringing faith to life and bringing faith leaders and men and women of courage to life. And so I'm thrilled to be with you.
You know, we've only got 10 minutes with you, and I'd really love to give you the rest of the time to praise my work. So please continue. Please. And I just want to say, I'm ready to throw Huckabee under the bus. You're my guy. It's that simple. Just keep praising.
I will
Have you read my other books? There's a rumor that you're going to run for president. Is there anything to that rumor?
It is guilty as charged.
Guilty as charged. When are you planning to make the big? When are you planning to make the big announcement?
So we jumped in 2 months ago. We announced at Liberty University.
What?
March 23rd.
I'm kidding you, Ted. I knew that.
Yeah, well, you know,
it was wonderful. It was wonderful. It was everybody. It's kind of funny. Everybody's got to go to Liberty to kind of make their big. It's interesting how Liberty has come to be the place that if you want to speak to a certain base, the social conservatives, you go to Liberty. They know you're not fooling around.
Well, I'll tell you, the energy and enthusiasm we have seen, it's been breathtaking. Heidi and I went barnstorming up in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina.
I hope Heidi's your wife.
She is.
Oh, thank God.
And we brought our two little girls, Caroline and Catherine, who are 7 and 4, and we had standing room only crowds everywhere we went. The local press reported it was double the size of the crowds for anyone else. In the first week, we had over 51,000 contributions come in to tedcruz.org as people in all 50 states came and gave $4.3 million. 95% of those contributions were $100 or less. It really is breathtaking.
Well, one of the things people one of the things people like about you is you're plain spoken. You don't pull your punches. People know where you stand. I think in this election, that's going to be so important. Speaking about Liberty, a couple days ago, of course, Jeb Bush spoke at Liberty, and I was interviewed on Fox and Friends about that, and I think they were hoping I would just say, like, hey, isn't it great that he's talking about religious liberty? And the thing that struck me, and I wanted to bring this up with you, he did not mention same-sex marriage. And if you think you can talk about religious liberty, it's not even about the issue of same-sex marriage. It's the issue of will religious liberty be preserved? And as you know, because you've read my Bonhoeffer book, this is the issue of our day. Are people of faith going to be made to shut up about some of their core convictions? He did not speak to that. And to be honest, that bothered me. It worried me because I know there are some top people in his campaign who are very aggressively pro same-sex marriage. And, of course, that's their right. But the idea that he would appoint them to key places in his campaign, it really did trouble me. So I wanted to talk to you about religious liberty and that issue.
Well, you are exactly right. We are seeing today profound threats to religious liberty in America. I think the greatest threats we've ever seen. And you know, just a couple of months ago, we had the battles in Indiana and Arkansas when they passed their Religious Freedom Restoration Acts. And what happened afterwards was heartbreaking. We saw, number one, a perfect storm of the modern Democratic Party that has gotten so extreme and so radical in its devotion to mandatory gay marriage that they've decided there's no room for the religious liberty protected under the First Amendment. And sadly, Democrats joined with big business in vilifying an effort to protect our religious liberty. But what was most striking is how many Republicans, including Republicans running for president in 2016, ran and hid in the hills, were afraid to stand and be counted. I think Indiana and Arkansas were, as Reagan put it, a time for choosing. That was a sorting moment.
I think you're right.
And I'll tell you, one of the things that I have been blessed for the past 2 decades is to have the opportunity over and over and over again to stand and defend religious liberty and to win nationally over and over again. And I will not shirk from defending the religious liberty of every American. I mean, we're a nation, and you know this so well, Eric, that was founded by men and women who were fleeing religious oppression and coming to seek out a land where every one of us could worship God Almighty with all of our hearts, minds, and souls. And that is under profound jeopardy today.
There's no question. Folks, I'm talking to presidential candidate, Senator Ted Cruz. Unless this is someone doing an uncanny impression of Ted Cruz, I believe this is the real thing. We're talking about religious liberty. And you know, I'm working on a book right now about what you just said, the story of America, religious liberty. If you take that out of the equation, there's no America. And people today don't know this. And so I'm grateful for your candidacy, because you're doing your part to educate America about something that is at the very heart of who we are. We cannot be America without true religious liberty.
You're exactly right, and you know, you mentioned before the threat to religious liberty that is coming from the radical campaign to undermine marriage. You know, there was a moment at the gay marriage oral argument before the Supreme Court that was truly chilling, where Justice Alito asked the Obama Solicitor General, if you prevail, if the court issues a ruling that attempts to strike down the marriage laws of all 50 states, would that mean that the IRS could then deny 501c3 status to Christian churches, to Christian schools, to Christian universities, to any organization that maintains a biblical definition of marriage as the union of one man and one woman? And the Obama Justice Department's answer to the court was yes, that's exactly what we can do. So anyone, if you imagine, the next step on this is your church being told it now pays income taxes on the tithes that are given each week, that it is now singled out and discriminated against, that universities like Notre Dame or Georgetown or Brigham Young or any university that is founded as a Christian university, if it continues to follow biblical teachings on marriage, the federal government is asserting the power to discriminate and persecute them. That really is stunning.
It just blesses me that you understand this and you're talking about it, because again, I talk about this everywhere I go. It makes me sick that there are parallels, you know, to the Bonhoeffer story, and people say, well, what are you saying, that people who are pro same-sex marriage are Nazis? Absolutely not. And as soon as people start perverting the argument, what we're talking about is an issue of the state using its power to bully Americans. And I think that I honestly think that this is going to be the signal issue for candidates on the GOP side, that if somebody is not willing to speak boldly, forcefully, courageously on this issue, they will never get the nomination. And that is why I was somewhat disappointed in Jeb Bush's maiden speech on this issue.
You know, Eric, I think you're exactly right. Let me tell you about a couple I've had the opportunity to get to know. It's a couple named Dick and Betty Odegaard who live in Iowa, and they have a small farm. And on that farm, they have an old historic church building that for years they rented out and allowed people to have weddings, and they would cater those weddings, and it's how they provided their livelihood. Well, a couple of years ago, 2 gay men came in and wanted to have a gay marriage. And the Odegaards are devout Mennonites. It was contrary to their faith to open up their facility and host a gay marriage, which was contrary to their
This
religion.
is happening all over the country. These stories are not being told. Can you stay over for one more segment, or I think I'm going to lose you? You can stay over for another segment. So, folks, we're talking to Ted Cruz. That's the Senator Ted Cruz, not an imposter. We are talking about religious liberty. This is the Eric Metaxas Show. Please go to metaxastalk.com. We'll be back at some point. Stay tuned with Senator Ted Cruz.
Welcome to the Eric Metaxas Show. There's a time for kidding around and a time to be serious. This is not one of them. Broadcasting coast to coast, whatever that means, from the Empire State Building in the heart of New York City. This is the Eric Metaxas Show with your host, Eric Metaxas.
Hey there, this is Eric Metaxas. I have on the phone with me Senator Ted Cruz. We spoke to him in the last hour. We're speaking to him again right now. I think we've got him for about 10 minutes here, and it's a joy to speak with him. Senator Ted Cruz, are you on the line?
I am indeed. I have to say I'm a little terrified that we brought in this segment to the tunes of Werewolves in London.
Werewolves of London. You know what that is? That's a dog whistle to all the other Warren Zevon lovers out there in America. It's very sly on my part, but they know who they are. If you love Warren Zevon, that's a dog whistle to you. Now, we've got to get this straight because I had you on in the previous hour. Thank you for giving us another few minutes here, but you are running for president.
Yes.
When are you going to make your big announcement?
Well, as you and I visited we announced about 2 months ago on March 23rd.
Ted, I got you again.
At Liberty University.
I was joking. I know you announced. I'm just I'm just teasing you.
Look, if you're going to put up the line, I'm going to play the straight man. That works just fine.
Your announcement was beautifully timed. It was bold. It was well done. So me to even pretend that I could have missed that. But yeah, I like to tease people. And if you let me tease you, you know, we become instant friends. It's the people that are unable to be teased that I worry about them, because teasing people publicly is my love language. It's the sixth love language. So thank you.
Listen, I've got to say, you've got a terrific sense of humor, especially for a Yale graduate.
Hey, I'm no fan of Yale. Don't get me started on that. So I understand you went to Harvard, but somehow you retained your Christian faith nonetheless, which is shocking.
Well, I'll tell you, Eric, what my dad refers to my time up at Harvard as missionary service, and I suspect the same was true in New Haven.
Well, that's no. I went into when I went to college, I didn't really know what I believed, and I think that if you don't know what you believe, don't go to Yale, because you're gonna sort of imbibe the sort of secular, humanist, liberal Kool-Aid zeitgeist, and it's pretty much unfortunately what you get at most of the elite institutions. They sneer at faith. That's changing a little bit. I was up at Dartmouth recently, and I was thrilled to see some good things going on. There are good things going on around the country. But listen, you're running for president, and we're talking about religious liberty, and we're talking about the fact that, at least my opinion, is that if somebody wants a GOP nomination in America, they must take a bold stand on religious liberty, because most Americans, or certainly Americans on the GOP side, are really worried, and they need a leader to speak up about this, to speak winsomely but courageously. And you've been doing that, and I have to say I want to applaud you for that.
Well, thank you, Eric. I very much agree with you that the threat on religious liberty is a singular issue. And I don't think it's just an issue for Republicans. I think this is an issue that unifies us, that brings us together. It cuts across racial lines and ethnic lines and party lines and class lines. It wasn't too long ago that religious liberty was an issue that enjoyed bipartisan agreement. I mean, just 2 decades ago, Congress passed the Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act. That passed the Senate 97-3.
Right.
It received votes of such famed right-wing nutcases as Ted Kennedy, Chuck Schumer, and Joe Biden.
Yeah.
It was signed into law by a Democrat, Bill Clinton.
Was Clinton a Democrat?
In theory, although not nearly as much as his wife Hillary is,
right,
who finds herself completely ideologically aligned with Barack Obama.
Yeah. Well, that's something. Gosh, there's so much to talk about. I just want to say again that this issue of religious liberty. Do you know my friend Terry Mattingly? I don't know if you know Terry Mattingly. He writes a column for Universal Syndicate, and he often talks about faith and journalism because he's in the world of journalism, and he has been writing recently about the idea that journalists across the board are now putting the phrase religious liberty in quotes, which, journalists call them scare quotes. In other words, they say, well, religious liberty, and it's in quotes because they're basically saying that when we talk about religious liberty, we're not really talking about religious liberty. It's just this term that we throw around. That actually is frightening. It's like putting the term freedom of the press in quotes. Either the founders gave us these things and said that these are from God, by the way, or what are we talking about? And so the attempt on the left to deconstruct the very idea of religious liberty is chilling. Every American, it doesn't matter what your faith is, every American should be worried about this.
You are exactly right. There is a reason religious liberty is the very first liberty protected in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights. It's foundational. Without the freedom to worship God and live according to your beliefs and faith and conscience, every other freedom is undermined. Every other freedom is built upon that. And to give you a sense of just how radicalized the modern Democratic Party has become, last summer, we recall the U.S. Supreme Court decided the Hobby Lobby decision, a terrific victory for religious liberty where the court ruled that the federal government through Obamacare could not force a Christian company to pay for abortion-inducing drugs against its religious faith. Well, that decision was 5-4. It was a narrow decision. Immediately following that, Senate Democrats introduced legislation to gut the Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act, to strip it away so that Hobby Lobby would lose, so that the Little Sisters of the Poor, a Catholic charity that the Obama administration is litigating against to force the nuns to pay for abortion-inducing drugs. You want to talk about a radical and extreme position.
Well, this is the thing I say. I want to educate. It's not about being left or right. It's about educating fair-minded Americans on what it means to be an American. And that's why I keep saying this is what the book that I'm writing about, because I think that our generation, your generation, my generation, we've not been educated on what these things mean. Religious liberty, we've had so much religious liberty, we never think about it. And suddenly these liberties are being challenged by an increasingly powerful state. That's not good for any American, and that's what we need to say over and over. It's not good for any American. It's not about Christians or people who oppose same-sex marriage. It's about America. It's about the roots of our liberty. I know you understand that. It's one of the reasons I'm just so happy you're speaking out on this issue.
You're exactly right, and I'll tell you, it was heartbreaking when the Senate took up this effort to gut the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. There were 55 Senate Democrats. Do you know how many voted to preserve religious liberty?
I'm afraid to ask.
0. Not a single Democrat in the United States Senate. I gave a floor speech, an impassioned floor speech, where I was standing next to a picture of John F. Kennedy with a quote from him that he would not stand with a man who will not stand for religious liberty. And on the Senate floor, I said, where are the John F. Kennedys? Where are there was a time when Democrats...
The John F. Kennedys are now in the GOP. The John F. Kennedys are now in the GOP. The Che Guevaras have kind of come into the Democrat Party. This is what Americans don't know. This is, to talk to middle America about this. So I'm just so grateful you understand these things. You should run for president. Can I be bold and say that?
You make a powerful argument, and I'll say you've got me convinced.
I think the only thing I have to tell you, though, is that I would never be able to vote for a presidential candidate who's younger than I am unless, and here's the big thing, unless they took me on as their running mate. And I just want to say that if America insists that I serve my country in that way, I want to say that I would potentially be willing to do that, just so you're aware of that.
Well, and I'll say to your listeners, the Cruz Metaxas ticket, you heard it here first.
Don't you need a Yale guy to balance the ticket? It's so Harvard heavy. You say we need the balance. You need the balance. People are looking for balance, okay? And I think that anyway. I just offer that to you. I'm not telling you what to do, but if you want my vote, I'd have to be your Veep. Now, listen, we're going to have you back another time. It's been a joy to speak with you. You really are Senator Ted Cruz. You're not putting me on.
I really am. And let me say, Eric, I so appreciate that you speak the truth and you speak it powerfully. The truth has power, and it is needed now more than anything. People are looking for someone to tell the truth and do what they said they would do, and you're doing that every day, and I'm really grateful for your leadership.
Well, I'm really grateful for your leadership. God bless you, young man. We will continue this conversation as soon as possible. Thank you, Senator Ted Cruz. This is the Eric Metaxas Show. We'll be right back.
He makes a lot to say. Spends his day